Hello, learners. Today we are going to say about the structured programming in C. The topics which we are going to cover is what is structured programming, what are the core pillars of structured programming, the key components used, and a code example. So structured programming in C is nothing but the top-down design. It is going to be the functions of modules and the structured control flows of sequence, selections, and repetitions, which are completely eliminating the need for chaotic go-to statements. So this structured programming just avoids go-to statements. They are fully specified in the form of a structured control flows. C is inherently a structured programming language because it forces you to break large, complex programs into smaller, manageable blocks or subroutines. Here are the core pillars of the structured programming. So, as Boehm-Jacobi theorem states that for any of the programming languages, we do adopt these three major pillars of the languages. The first one is going to be the sequence. Sequence is nothing but the instructions which are executed sequentially one after the other, exactly in the order they are written. And the second is going to be the selection, in which the program chooses between the alternative paths based on the condition using if else, or switch statements. And third one is going to be the repetition statement or the iteration statements. Here we have the blocks of code executed repeatedly until a specific condition is met using while, do while, or for loops. So these are the core pillars of any of the programming languages. And we have the key components in a C implementation. So the key components are, first one is going to be the modularization. As we begin off with, we are just going to break a complex program into small submodules. Here also, instead of writing a single massive block of code, structured programming dictates breaking code into individual functions. So every function performs one specific task. So we have two different types of functions. One is going to be the main function, the other one is going to be user-defined functions. Main function int main method going to serve as a control entry point of every C program. If I'm coming across main function, this statement which seems that this is the point to which the compiler have to begin its execution. And the second type is going to be the user-defined functions, which is nothing but the custom subroutines that enforce code reusability and isolated bugs. So we are just going to have the user-defined functions that they are going to enforce it so that they can able to reuse it whenever they call for or they need for. And then next one is going to be the scope and encapsulation. So variables are bound to specific blocks of code. So within that block, we are just going to have those variables. So when we are going to have a set of variables bounded to a specific block, which is nothing but the local scope. So preventing an unauthorized modifications from other sections of the program. So when you're going to use local variable, so it is going to be, the variable is going to be particularly for that block. We cannot able to access it elsewhere, or we cannot able to make modifications to that particular variable. And the next one is the scope restriction of control flow. So structured programs have a single entry and a single exit point for blocks of code. So preventing go-to statements into it. So these are the three main components, key components of a C implementation. We do have modularization, meaning that we are just going to split a complex program into submodules, and we have the scope of the variables. So scope of the variables is determined within that particular block, and we have scope restriction to that control flow, which means that we are going to have a single entry and a single exit for executing that particular blocks, avoiding the go-to statement. Here comes the example code, which illustrates the structure of the C program. Here, as an initial statement is going to be the header file. So hash include less than symbol stdio.h represents the header file, which signifies the standard input output library have to be incorporated under this particular file. Okay, so without this statement, we cannot able to have the printf statements or scanf statements. After this, we have the function declaration, that is our modularization part. So the function declaration is nothing but, so this is the specific set of function. I'm just going to use it. So it is going to be key indicator to the compiler. Okay, so void check even odd. This is going to be the function. So function is going to have the specification of open bracket. You can able to pass the argument towards it and close bracket semicolon. So this is going to be the function declaration. Okay, meaning that we are just going to have a notice to the compiler that this specific function has been used in this code. Next comes here int main. So as we have been specified that int main is going to be one of the start point of execution. We are just going to have a notification to the compiler that the execution have to begin from here. Once it enters into the main function, we have the variable declaration part. So this signifies this sequence, that is sequence instructions, that is variables or initially step-by-step instructions has been executed. So here where limit of 5 is the variable that has been declared with int data type. We're just going to have a printf statement. So printf statement is going to have the user perspective to be identified. So analyzing the numbers from 1 to n, 1 to 5. We're just going to have a repetition or the iteration statement over here. So your iteration statement uses the for loop. So for loop have a specific syntax like for int I is equal to 1 semicolon I less than equal to limit semicolon I plus plus. I is equal to 1, which initializes the structure, whereas the second part is going to be the condition statement where the loop have to be terminated, and third one is going to be the iteration where it have to proceed its iteration, whether it is going to proceed sequentially or it is going to be proceeded to its fixed value. So here we are going to have the sequential incremental procedure. So what is our task within this loop? We are just going to check whether it is going to be even or odd. We are calling the function. The calling function is going to be check even odd and passing the value to it. So this calling function is going to give rise to the function definition. So here void, we are just going to define the function. What is the task of the function? We are just going to check whether it is going to be even or odd. So this method doesn't return any value. So we are going to keep it as the return type as void. This is the function name and we are passing the argument to it. So here we have passed the I. So the I will be referred to the int number. And the second structure of the poem Jacomini is this selection statement. Okay, making decisions to execute the instruction. So we use here if statement. If the condition, here the condition is whether the number is divisible by 2. If the number is divisible by 2, then it produces 0. In such a case, we are just printing it as the number. The number is even. The past number is even. Else, the number is odd. So this function has been invoked within the loop. So first, when it passes 1, it is going to produce as number 1 is odd. The second time, we are going to have limit up to 5. The second time, it iterates the loop and comes the iterated variable I takes the value of 2 and pass it to the function. So 2 comes into existence here, invokes the particular definition for it, and the condition is true and printing it as number 2 is even. Third time, it occurs as number 3 is odd. And fourth time, which come across with the loop, iterating variable loop and calling the function. And once the function has been invoked, it the condition here satisfies to be true. So fourth time, the number 4 is even. And fifth time, it's, it iterates the process and produces the output as number 5 is odd. And once this function has been terminated with the limit condition, it comes out of the for loop. And we have been specified it as return 0, which means that main is a function and we have been specified the return type to be int, meaning that we are supposed to have the return type to that particular main function. So we specify that return type is 0 and it has single exit. So we start with a single main function, a single entry, and we ended up with a single exit point. So the structured programming in C is a coding method that organizes the code into a clear top-down logical flow using functions. And we have three core control structures, which is nothing but the sequence, selection, and repetition. For sequence, it is going to be normal declaration part. Assignment statements is going to be the sequence, whereas the selection, we do prefer if statement or switch statement to have the control selection statements, and we have the iteration to be done when you're going to have execute multiple times the instruction. We do prefer the iteration are the looping statements. So the looping statements are do, while, and for loop. So for loop, we have a specific syntax to follow. So for we are just going to have initiating the variable. The second part is going to be the condition check that until then, until which part have to the loop have to be iterated, the conditional statement, and third part is going to be incremental statement. So in this structured programming in C specifically, which completely eliminates the messy of go-to statements. So we avoid go-to statements in the C programming part. Thank you.